Hey folks, so this is like our first trial run of the mock interview. So what we're doing is we're using interviewing.io as a platform, and we have a mock interviewer, that is me, Vivek, and we have Becca, who's agreed to be our first volunteer candidate or mock interviewee. And we will be covering today. What we'll be doing is we'll be essentially looking at a coding problem, and we'll just be walking through that. So before we get started, so this is a 45-minute interview, roughly about 40 to 43 minutes or something like that. So we are starting at about 4 past the hour. So we will probably go over by a few minutes instead of the 45 that we had planned, and then we also will spend about 10 minutes on feedback. So net of it, there should be a 1-hour session here. So with that said, let's actually jump right in, and let's not waste any more time. So Becca, welcome to the interview. Before we get started, I'd like to ask a few quick questions, more in terms of your programming experience and expertise, so that I'd like to get a good feel of how long have you been programming. What would be your favorite programming language?
So I'd say favorite language is Python, but I've been coding in Java since the past few months.
I see. And this interview, would you prefer using Java or Python?
I'd use Java, please.
Got it. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst and 10 being best, how would you rate your Java skills?
I'd put it at a 7.5, 8, somewhere there.
Okay. And what would it take to get it from like an 8 to a 9? Like what's missing?
I would like to maybe master Java Lambda expressions and stuff. That's my idea of, becoming, like, keeping up to date with the new Java functionalities.
Got it. And how long have you been coding in Java?
So I'm graduating this year in my undergrad, and I started coding in Java from my second year. So that would be 2017. And I spent major portion of 2019 and 2018 coding in Python. However, I've gotten back to coding in Java in 2020.
Got it. Okay, makes sense. Perfect. So let's jump right in. So one of the things that what I wanted to do was here's basically the question, right? So I'm going to give you a bunch of numbers, okay, in an array. And each number essentially represents, so this is from, let's say this is from east to west. Each thing represents the height of the building at that particular location, okay? So let us, if I give you an array of something like saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Then let me just also add something which is like, a little, not always ascending, right? So if I have this, right, that means that there are 8 buildings that are there. The leftmost building is essentially 1 story. The next building is 2 stories. The third building is 3 stories. The fourth building is 4 stories, and so on, right? And then the 8th building is only 2 stories. Okay. Yep. Now, what I'd like you to tell me is that if there is a sunset that's happening, okay? So this is east, and this is west, right? So if there is a sunset that is happening, I'd like to.
Hello. Hello, I can't hear Vivek.
I think Vivek, yeah, let me follow up with him.
All right, excellent. Hey, sorry about the tech snafu. So just catching up, each of the array elements actually represents the height of the building. The first element is the eastmost building, the last building is the westmost building. And at this point of time, how many floors do you think can see sunset, can get sunset view right now?
I'm sorry, how many floors?
How many floors can actually see the sunset?
Okay, so the sunset, so just building 7 and building 2, right?
Yeah, the building 7 and building 8, right? 2 floors of building 8 can see it, and 5 floors of building 7 can see it, correct?
Yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
you're subtracting it. Okay.
Right. I mean, because the first floor and the second floor of building 7 cannot see it because it will be hidden by building 8, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, got it.
Okay. So what I want you to do is, given this array, I'd like you to return both. One, the total number of floors that have sunset view in each building, basically.
Oh,
and
okay.
and the total number of buildings that have sunset view, which is essentially the non-zero elements of that return array.
Okay, so just to clarify, you need the total number of floors that can view the sunset and the total number of?
Not the total. I need you to return an array which tells me how many floors in that building have sunset view.
Oh, okay. So an array basically denoting number of floors in each corresponding building. Okay. Yeah. So for
so
this,
in this
it
case,
would
it will
be
be what? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 5, 2, right?
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I want. So go. What
Okay. So right now I'm just thinking out loud. I'd probably start looping from the end of the array and keep track of what's the tallest building that I've come across so far, and then keep going through it. So should I take an example test case just to verify if that logic would work?
Go for it.
Yeah, so if I had something like this, so in this case, since I'm starting from there, so 5 can see everything and my max will be 5. Then moving over to 7, so 5 could see everything, and then my max is 5, so 7 minus 5, that's 2. Max becomes 7. This would be nothing. 6 would also be nothing, and my max doesn't get updated. Then this would be 3. This would get updated to 10, and this would be 0 and 0. Yeah, so I think this approach would work. Do you recommend I go ahead and code it up? Hello?
If you're satisfied with the algorithm, go for it.
Go ahead and code it?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of a test case that might not work, but it seems pretty straightforward. Okay, cool. I'll go ahead with it. I'll just change my settings, or tab settings I've set differently. So should I define a different class?
I think you'll have to keep the same class because it won't run otherwise.
No, I would instantiate an object of that class.
Oh yeah, you can do that if you want. Yeah, sure. Up to you.
Okay. So Scarlet Sunset. So I'm just like running my code through the test case just to like verify, cross-check that it's correct. So I'm setting max as 0 initially. Define an answer array, which would technically be what I'll be returning. And so I'm iterating from the end of the array. So initially, stars of I is 5, which is greater than max. So answer of I would be 5 minus 0, 5. Then this else condition won't be reached. So then max would be math on max of that, or that. So that would become 5. Then in the next one, it would be 7 is greater than 5. 7 minus 5, 2. And again, it will get updated to 7. And then in the next one, it would be 3. So that would make it 0. And max would be updated to it would be updated to 3. It still says 7. So yeah, I'm getting this over here. Okay, why am I getting this here? Oh. Vivek?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the code I've written.
Are you sure this will work? Are you comfortable with what you've written?
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we take it for a spin?
Sure. So what test case should I put in?
Yeah, whatever you have is
This.
fine. Let's run it.
Okay.
The expected output would be 0, 0, 0, and 5 and 2, right?
Yeah. Is the output visible? Yeah.
Yeah, we can see that. What would be the runtime complexity of this algorithm?
It would be O of n. I'm taking n as the length of the input towers array. Hello?
Got it. Okay, makes sense. Okay, so this makes sense. Now, if I were to change the question a little, and what I want to understand is essentially, if I want to just return the number of buildings with sunset view, even if one floor has a view, that's fine. How would that work?
So I wouldn't really store the number of floors. You just want the number of buildings, right? So I would just keep a count variable in which I would keep updating it. And max, I would keep updating all the same, just so that I'll know which buildings are visible.
There is just one variation here, which is that, let me give you an example in this case, right? So here, if this were to be like a 6, right? Then in this case, obviously this building has a sunset view. This building has a sunset view, correct?
Yeah.
6 has what about this guy?
He wouldn't be able to view anything.
Well, you can see the sunset from the terrace. So this would have a sunset view in this definition. And this one will not have a sunset view because it's completely blocked. Does that make sense?
I didn't.
So I'm just changing the definition of sunset view a little.
Oh, okay, you're changing it. Okay, so, I thought this was already in place and I forgot about it.
No. What you have already in place is good. So what you did is number of floors that had sunset view, right? But I'm saying that
so now
I'm only counting the number of buildings with sunset view. So I want you to change your existing code so that you can now return, instead of an int array, I just wanted to return an int. In this case, the answer will be 3.
Okay, so like terrace view is considered as well. Okay. All right. So then I could probably create an else if, where if towers of I equal to max. So anyway, I'll be adding another variable account. If this is there, then update count. Then else if this is there too, so I could just greater than equal to max. Yeah, so I'll just run through the code and check it again. Okay. Yeah. So in this case, it will start again. So max is 0, 2 would be counted, max would be 2. So count would become 1. Then it would go to 6. 6 is still greater than 2. So count will get updated again to 2. And max would get updated to 6. Then once more iterate again 6. So because we're considering terrace view, it's still equal to max, so count will get updated to 3. Then max would still remain 6. Then for the rest of them, it was always less than max, so it's not going to get updated, so it will return 3. Hello?
Makes sense.
Yeah, should I run
Do you
it?
want to take your code for a spin? Yeah, go for it. Your test date tells your test. Yeah. It returned 2.
Okay. This is weird.
That's because you didn't change the test case. Look at line 16.
Oh, okay. My bad.
That's all right.
Yeah.
What would be the largest value that you can return?
That would be the
This
length
function?
of the array. If
Because
every
every building
yeah,
will have a sunset view, correct?
yeah.
What's the smallest?
Smallest would be 1. I mean, the first building has to, if it's like the first building is, even if it's a 100-floor building, it would see the sunset, the last element.
Can the input values be negative?
So we are considering floors, so I have not heard of a building with negative floors. So that's the
They're just
reason
underground.
why
They're just underground.
Yeah. So if we were considering a building which is underground, I'm assuming there would be no sunset at all. And since we are considering math.max, it would never come into place. I mean, I've set max as 0. Initially, I kept it as integer.min value, but then I realized that negative values could be greater than integer.min value, so I set it to 0.
I noticed that. So in this case, you mentioned that the max value that you can get out of this would be the length of the array itself. And the min value you said was 1.
Yeah, so if we have negative building, like underground floors, then yeah, it could be 0.
It could be 0, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So this is good. I think this given that you've done this question pretty quickly, I think I'd like to move to a different question. And so this is good. Thank you for doing this. And let's actually go to question number 2. Okay.
Okay.
So question number 2 is essentially I'm going to give you a data set again, which essentially contains the I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to say this. Okay, so I've got cards. I'm on line 41 in case you're not seeing it. So essentially, I have a deck, which is a list of cards. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And each card, it has a list of names. Okay.
Okay.
This is what I have. All right. Now the thing I'm trying to find out is that I would like you to tell me which name appears in the most number of cards. I want you to find out the name that appears in most number of cards. I want you to find out the name that appears in least number of cards. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to find out the names that would divide the deck into two parts. So essentially, the question is like, each card. So let me take a step back. So the way this works is that somebody asks a question like saying, does this card have this name? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you will say, yes, it has the name, or no, it doesn't have the name, right? And all the ones that contain the name are put in one pile. All the ones that don't contain the name are put in another pile.
Okay.
So I want you to find that specific name that divides the deck into as equal size as possible.
What you're trying to say is that if, say, I have a deck of 10 cards, I need to find a name which only exists on 5 cards. Is that what you're
Correct.
implying?
And if you can't find that, then I need you to find the deck that has like 4 or 6 And if that doesn't exist, then 3 or 7. If that doesn't exist, then 2 or 8. Right?
Okay, and can a card have multiple instances of the same name?
No.
Okay. All right. So any name would then work out, right? Or you want to start with half and then keep moving?
How would any name work?
No, so we said either if there was like a deck of 10 cards and if we don't get a 5-5 divide, then we'll move over to a 4-6 divide. That's what you're implying,
Correct.
right? So
Correct.
by
But
that
so
logic, if we keep reducing, eventually, unless every card has equal number of names and same names, that would be the only case, right? I'm just trying to understand the question better.
No, good question. So let me rephrase what I was trying to say so that I can get it right. So a card may have different number of names. So a card may have 10 names, a card may have 20 names, a card may have 50 names, and that's irrelevant. Like that could be any number of names. Now, if you pick any random name, then and that name only appears on one card, then that is not the right answer, right? Like given the current deck, given the current set of cards, your goal is to find that name that can divide the deck into 5 and 5.
Yeah.
Okay?
So
if there is nothing that divides it into 5 and 5, then you go find something that can divide into 6 and 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. So basically, it's like priority, like which one comes, which one divides it the best, right? Okay.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I'm guessing my input would be a list of lists, and the list of lists would be strings inside.
Yeah, string is fine. Yeah, list of lists and string.
Okay, so I'm thinking of creating a hash map. So like every name, and since you said that each card has only one occurrence of a name, not multiple, right? So a hash map with each individual's name and the number of cards, like their frequency. And then I was thinking of maybe dumping it into some data structure where I start by searching if it has, like deck.length divide by 2, that many occurrences. So I could maybe like use binary search on that. So what I'm thinking is if I've, processed the deck and the cards, and if say I have a list like this, sorry, a hash map like this, okay? So if suppose I have Becca with in 10, like I'm saying my deck is of 10 cards. 10 cards. Becca appears in 10. Let's say Vivek appears in 7. Then I have, say, I'm at a loss for names right now. Let's say Tom has 3, like, okay, 3. So in this case, since they're starting at 5, then we're moving on to 6, 4, then we're moving on to 7, 3. What name would I return? Tom or Vivek? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I missed that. Say that one more time.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify if this was my input. Okay, so 10 cards. Each card had different number of names listed on it. And say Becca was listed on 10 cards, Vivek was listed on 7 cards, and Tom was listed on 3 cards. Hello?
Tom and Vivek will split the thing in 7 and 3, right? So either is fine.
Yeah, so which name would I return? Okay, either would do.
Either is fine. Both are acceptable answers.
Oh, okay.
Either one.
Yeah. So, okay, so I think this would be pretty straightforward. So I just, and I can retrieve it as such. So I could also create a hash map of the number of cards, and that would connect to number of people. So I would need two hash maps, I guess. So I'll just tell you what my approach would be. First, create a hash map where I get every name, and I'm just saying, suppose there's another individual, let's say Matt, who also has 7. So once I get this as my first hash map, I create a second hash map, which would have the number, and I would have Becca, and then 7 would have Vivek, comma, Matt, and then 3 would have Tom. And then, as you said, anyone would work, right? So I would just return either one of these or one of these. And that would be acceptable?
Right.
Okay, so I'm thinking of going ahead with this approach. Do you recommend I go ahead and code it?
Yeah, go for it.
You
I'm
just
still
need to
unsure of why you
know.
would need a second, but that's okay. Go for the let's go through this, and then as you're getting through this, before you code the second hash map, we can take a pause. Okay.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so I'll just take this out. Okay, and I'll probably go to a list of lists.
I'm just creating test data for you as you're doing this.
Yeah, sure. So I've created the first hash map.
So go ahead. So are you done?
Yeah, so I've created the first hash map, which would basically be frequency of every name in the cards.
Okay. What's the next step?
Yeah, so my next step was to sort of reverse the hash map where I sort of map the number of names and their frequency.
But why do you need to reverse it? Like, what is your goal? Your goal is to find what?
So then I'd, retrieve names which have 10 by 10 divided by 2, 5. If that's not possible, then 4. That's how I would go about it. Yeah.
Right. And if, in order to do that, like, can you not simply iterate over the entire hash map that you've just created and find the element that is closest to? Why do you need to create the reverse hash?
I'm thinking if there are like 10,000 names or like a lot of names, even 100 names, and if I already know that, it's going to be there at 5, there's a name. Like, that's what I felt. Because you don't exactly know, right?
Go ahead. Go ahead with what you're trying to do.
Did I make any sense? So I was just thinking,
go ahead.
See, okay, all right, sorry. I'm just gonna name this which one. I'm sorry for the bad variable name. Okay, so I've created the second hash map. Now I'll go about the search procedure. So since I'm moving from, sorry?
What's your third step? You did the first one was to do the hash map 1. Second step was to do that 2. What's your third step?
Yeah, so I'm thinking since I keep like 2 values, like 2 divisions, right? So like a D1 and a D2, I'm typing below. So initially it would be deck by 2. So, and if my deck is say 11 cards, so then would be 5, start with a 6, then I'd search for either one and else I'd keep reducing. So yeah, so I think I'll go ahead with that.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing a little bit of some background noise maybe from you, but that's okay. Go on.
Vivek.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, so I just
Yeah,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
clarify one thing. So in this test case, if suppose Vivek, Tom, and Matt weren't there and it was just Becca 10, so I'm assuming that can't really divide this. So in that case, I would return an empty string. Is that fine?
Sure. I mean, will that ever happen?
Yeah, there could be a case in which there are equal number of names on every card and the same names, because that wouldn't divide it effectively.
So when would you return, when would 92F take effect?
I'm sorry, what?
When would line number 92 execute? Like, why would it ever go to return empty?
If the strings, if their frequency is all equal to the size of the deck, like instead of Matt 7, Vivek 7, Tom 3, if my deck was 10 cards and each name had a frequency of 10, then.
Yeah. Then what should return? Any name is fine. Empty is not an acceptable answer.
Oh, okay. All right. Then I just return this. And I'm assuming that the deck isn't empty. Like there has to be a name on every list.
Okay.
Could
You
that
can
be
make
a
that
case
assumption.
where there are no names?
No, that's fine. Let's assume that the deck has at least one card and the card has at least one name.
Yeah, okay. So in that case, since my deck is a list of lists, I just take the first name. So return deck get 0 dot get 0. Okay, I'll just cross check if it was this. So if my deck dot size is 10, so that's an even number. So my D1 would be 5 and D2 would be 5 as well. And then if it was 11, it would be 5 and D2 would be 6. Yeah, so B1 always has to be a smaller number. So if 3, that would also be 1, and that would be 2. That would get reduced to that. Yep. So then I'm going to HM2. If it contains B1, I'm retrieving any name from there. Else if it's B2. So now this Becca would be 10. So we start with 5, 5, and then it gets changed to 4. This gets changed to 6. Again, we check. There's no 4 or 6. So this gets changed to 3, and this gets changed to 7. And there is a 3, and that's Tom. So it returns Tom. And yeah, Vivek, yeah, I think the code is fine.
Okay. All right, let's take it for a spin. This should return either Tom or Vivek, right? No matter Vivek.
No, actually, I'm checking for 3 first, the smaller value first. So it should return Tom actually.
Yeah, it should return Tom in this case, yeah.
Okay, let me just check in case there's an error. Yeah, I got this with this size over here. Where is HM? Okay, over there. This would have to be connected. Yeah, so it returns Tom.
Okay.
Hello?
So let me just remove one of the Toms, and now it should be either Matt or Vivek, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
So take it for a spin. Let's see.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Vivek.
So that actually brings us to the end of the interview portion of the thing. So why don't we start with your self-assessment? Like, how do you think you did?
I should have clarified certain, conditions earlier. Like with the first problem, I just assumed that a negative number would not get any sunshine, and I set max at 0. I should have clarified that, I guess, with the interviewer. And in this case, I did make 2 errors, coding errors with the math.flow function and variable naming. And I did use a lot of memory in the second problem, but I felt that would give me a good time complexity, which is why I went ahead with it. So I think my major change would be to clarify more about the problem with the interviewer.
Got it. Okay. And anything else more in terms of like what could you do differently? What could you do better?
I guess you would be better able to tell me that.
What was it again?
I guess you'd be in a better position to give me feedback on where I could have improved.
Yeah, we will talk about that. I'll provide my feedback in a second. Anybody else with any feedback? Like, I'm just looking at throwing it open to the audience to see what they have as feedback.
I think she did really good. She explained her thought process. She solved the problems before coding, which is always a good quality. She ran the test case before, just click and run, which is always a good thing. So I think overall, I would say excellent from my point of view.
Yeah, she did. I think so. She did really good because she was explaining each and every line of code she was writing. Yeah, up front, like she told, she did not ask a lot of questions that she should have done. But other than that, I think so. The way she brought her thought process down to code, and she was trying to take the interviewer through each and every line she was writing. That was really good. And she was able to get runnable code. So, yeah.
Absolutely, Rishabh. That was definitely well done. Anybody else with any other feedback? All right, so let me start with mine, and then folks can feel free to jump in and pile on, right? So I think overall, this has been definitely a well above average interview. There were a few gaps, and I want to highlight each one of them as I go through this. But the summary of it, like I think it's a well done interview. I think you've done a fantastic job of getting to the final code. Your final output was flawless. And the process and engagement of the interviewer, those things are all made sense. So I think it was definitely well above average. Couple of concern points. I want to start from the beginning. One is for someone who's got a couple of years of Java experience, like claiming yourself to be in the 8, it seemed a little bit of a stretch. Typically, I would recommend picking a number which is more around 6 or a 7, easier. Unless you are very comfortable with it, and there's you can talk about memory management and garbage collection and a whole bunch of other things that go with it, because there's a lot more to learn. So be a little bit more. The number itself is irrelevant. You picked 8, and going to a 9 was lambda expressions, which makes sense. The fact that you knew what you didn't know or what you need to practice next is a good thing. So I think that is what I was looking for in that particular segment, and that made total sense. So that was cool. For both interview questions, I was expecting you to go through a 4 stages of the questions in general, and I think you did a fantastic job on both. The first step is requirement clarification, where you are expected to ask questions around is this exactly what am I supposed to solve? Am I solving this, and am I figuring this out and whatnot? For the first question, from a requirement standpoint, I think you made an implicit assumption that the numbers cannot be negative. You kind of even came up with that at a different point of time where it potentially could be an issue, but you didn't clarify that at any point of time, and you didn't even state that as an assumption. So I think that was one miss in terms of requirement clarification, but you did clarify requirements at various points of time. So I think you have the mechanics in place. But the only feedback for you is that if even at a later point of time when you're doing the problem solving or coding, you have a concern or a question about the root cause of the test cases and whatnot, feel free to bring up that requirement clarification again, saying hey, just checking, can the numbers be negative, or can the array be empty, and things like that. You asked that question for the deck of cards. You said can the card deck be empty? Can the cards have no tags and things like that, right? So you asked that question. So I think that you should deliberately do every time you have that. So otherwise, requirement clarification was fantastic on both questions. I don't think you had any challenges there.
Is it fine if you ask the interviewer mid-code, or would that be a negative point, as though she started coding and then it struck her? Would that be a negative?
Yeah, no, I think yes, you have to do requirement clarification first. The thing is that if there are other requirements that are coming up as you're going through coding, please feel free to ask. It's better to ask later than to not ask at all.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay? If you don't do requirement clarification in the beginning and you only do it at the coding time, then that's a negative no-no.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, makes sense, right? The second thing is problem solving. On both questions, I think your problem solving was quite good. I think I like the first one was very fluent. You are super quick to get to the crux of the problem. You understood exactly what is required. I even changed the question a little for you, and you were able to adapt your code to that one. That made sense. Second question, you really don't need the second hash map, because once you have created the first hash map, all you have to do is iterate through all the values in the hash map, right? You iterate through the entire entry set, and you just have to find a value which is closest to the midpoint. And what you do is that if you just it's almost like finding the max in an array, right?
Yeah.
If I had told you find the max, find the card with the most, find the name with the most number of cards, you don't need the second loop, right? You can just run a for loop and you would have gotten it. It should be the same thing. You shouldn't need to go through this. So I'm a little surprised as to why you did that. I kind of hinted at not needing that, but it looks like you didn't catch it. So I think you may want to think through that.
I think I made a mistake. So I made a mistake in which I was considering maybe, hundreds of names. And if I were to go through 100 of names, instead of that, I could just use a hash map with O of 1. But what should have struck me was that I had already So it was like O of n plus O of m, and that m would always be lesser than n. So I could have just iterated again. It wouldn't have affected the time complexity. I made a mistake there, yeah.
You've gone through all the cards and all the names anyways. So
yeah,
just going through
I forgot about that.
Again,
Yes.
unique names again wouldn't have made too much of a difference. So I think that was a piece that I think was a little off, and I think given the time, I was also a little sensitive of the time. I didn't try to push back too hard, and I let you run with it. But that said, I think that was the only like a negative mark that I have for you on the problem solving side. Otherwise, I think you've done well. And these are easy questions, by the way. Like these questions are not super complicated. So it's not too bad. And I think one of the things that Martin and I had discussed earlier was also to pick like a couple of easy coding questions instead of doing something that's like a lead code hard equivalent or something like that. So that's fine. I mean, the level of the question is almost irrelevant. We can use that. Any level can be used to extrapolate certain pieces. But you did pretty well here in terms of the problem solving. I think that would be my feedback. The thing that actually impressed me the most was your coding. You did a fantastic job of translating an algorithm to code. Like once you have figured out what that algorithm was, you did a beautiful job of you just went through, wrote the code, your for loops were fluent, you knew exactly what you're doing, you ran a reverse loop on the, in the first question because you're iterating from the right, I minus minus, greater than equals 0. I mean, you did all of those things very well. And that is they're all small nuances that make a huge difference in terms of, I know that you are proficient in coding based on what I saw here, like your proficiency shown through, and that is something that comes with practice. You've done a lot of that, and I think it was very evident. I know people who stumble a lot in such scenarios. So fantastic, well done. Couple of things to watch out for. One was you caught it yourself, which was like HM1, HM2. Naming has to be better, and you have to I call it like the name hash or like something else, or the inverse name hash or something like that. Maybe don't use IJKL, don't use HM1s and things like that. Right? That's not a good idea. Second minor thing that I have is actually the array list. Using of an array list instead of a list in your I think I was looking at which line was that. In the reverse map, right?
Yeah.
Line number 33. Why did you not use a list? Why are you using an array list?
Generally on the left-hand side. Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
Because you've done it everywhere else, but this one looked like a mess. And then later you fixed it for something else, like line 53. You naturally went for a list, and then it gave an error, so you decided to go do an array list instead. And it was like a little bit of I wasn't sure why you did that. So that was like so your fluency is there, but it looks like certain areas you may still need a little bit of work. And the other thing that I also noticed, which was like a snafu-ish thing, was like 63 is not required at all. The entire block is not required at all. If you just did dec.size divided by 2, it'll automatically do integer division, and it'll do math.4 anyways.
Yeah, I know. I just have this habit of doing it. Yeah, definitely.
So it's like, why put this logic? It doesn't make sense. I mean, if foo, then do something, and if not foo, then do the same thing. It just didn't make sense. I just would have done it in a simple way, right? So that was one that was a problem for me. Like when I was looking at this, it was like minor irritants, not much. Line number 78, you are checking for D1 is greater than 0. And but you're checking for D2 is less than dec.size. I'm a little worried. Like it should be one or the other, right? Shouldn't you be checking for greater than or equal to 0 and
so that
less than or equal to dec.size?
Yeah, that was before when I clarified it only too late that if every name had the same frequency equal to the dec.size, I was going to return an empty string. But then you said I could return any string. So if in that case, I would have kept it as equal to, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like just putting an equal to here and just putting an equal to here would have probably gotten you the same thing, right? Yeah,
definitely, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, it's fine, but just curious as to how your thought process was what I was looking at. So that is the third part of the equation that I look at always. Like, first part is requirement clarification. You did a fantastic job there, and small misses. Problem solving was fantastic, very minor misses. Coding, fantastic, very few misses that I just talked about. And the last one in my list is testing. And this one you excelled. Like, I don't think there was any miss. You did a fantastic job here. Like you were testing as you were writing code. And on top of that, you did not use the compiler. You were running through the tests yourself first. And then you were deciding whether you want to run it or not afterwards. And that was like brilliant. And that's exactly how it should be. Like, you should be super confident and comfortable with the code that you've written. And that's exactly what you did. I love that. So that, I think, was like almost flawless. Like I couldn't find a flaw, at least. Nothing stood out as a flaw in that case. So overall, I think if I were to be interviewing you and walking through this would be a pass. And definitely like a pass. You're like early in the career stage, so at this point it'll be like even like a strong hire or strong pass or something like that. Saying like, just go, like you're in, you're through. Let's go to the next level. Or I mean, you've demonstrated your coding abilities. You've demonstrated that you could walk through code and everything else. So this is good. I would probably also look for what other signals and data that we're getting from other interviewers in terms of like, is it just a one-off or is it consistent? Given that you not only solved the first question, you handled the curveball in the first question, and you solved the second question in a matter of 45 minutes, I think I'm super confident that you'll do well. So this would be like a high confidence pass, thumbs up from my side.
Okay, thank you so much for the feedback.
There's one more thing I had I think you should definitely watch the video again once Martin shares it. But one of the places where I made a note of this, but the thing was that you were a little, you have to be a little bit more confident about yourself. Like, shall I start coding? Shall I do this? No, you don't have to ask for permission in this case. It's just that this is your show. Like you're saying, like, hey, I think I'm good with the requirements. Let me just start coding and things like that. Like, just go for it. Like, don't ask for permission. Just go for it is what I would say.
Okay. So what I was assuming was that maybe if the interviewer wanted to maybe nudge me towards a more efficient solution, so that is why I figured I'd maybe ask the interviewer then in case he tries to give me a hint for a more efficient solution. If not, then green signal, yeah, go ahead and code. That's what I assumed, actually.
Okay, I got it. And maybe it's a slightly different way of asking that in that case. Like, because you seem like, hey, I mean, for the first question, there is no other efficient solution. You got an O of N, and you can't be more efficient than that. And you ask, like, hey, shall I code this now? Is it okay? I'm like, why are you asking me? Go for it. Okay. If you think you've solved it, then go code it, right? And that was the feedback there. Not a big one, but I think like the level of confidence you had in your code and your problem solving and your testing abilities, that was just mismatched with the way you came across. And it was like I was blown away later, but when you were like asking for permission of sorts first, I just felt a little weird. I automatically assumed that you won't be doing as well as you did. So there was a little bit of a prejudgment on my part, and that might negatively affect in terms of like interview grades as well. I mean, in this case, you did so well that it didn't matter. But if you were in like, let's assume you messed up a problem solving significantly or something like that, then these confidence and other pieces will factor in.
Okay. All right.
Right?
Sure.
Awesome. So any questions from you, Becca, on the feedback? Any specific clarification? I know you've been asking along as I was providing it, but anything else that you'd like to add to the feedback?
No, mostly I do agree with whatever you said. About the confidence bit, I just didn't want to come off with a lot of bravado and then afterwards realize my solution wouldn't work out. So yeah. I was like trying to keep a low profile.
Sure, no, yes, that's reasonable. And I think I would just recommend that you listen to this interview again and then see how you came across. And if that's an issue, then that's an issue. If not, that's fine. I mean, it's okay.
It'd be better if I watch myself. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Awesome. Anybody else with any other question? I know we've gone over by at least 11 minutes at this point, but any questions from anybody else? All right. If we don't have anything else, I think we will call it a day. Thank you, everyone, for being an observer, and your inputs have been valuable. Becca, thank you so much for
thank you so much for the
candidate
experience as well. Yeah, thank you so much, Vivek, Martin. Thank you.
Can you clarify?
And Martin,
both the,
thank you.
Can you clarify
Go
both
ahead,
the questions? Can you clarify both the questions once?
What do you mean? Do you want me to just repeat the questions?
Yeah, just repeat the questions once. Yeah.
Sure. The first question was essentially given an array of numbers where each number represents a building. The leftmost element in the array represents the eastmost building, and the rightmost element represents the westmost building. Your goal is to return an array that returns the number of floors for each building that has a view on the sunset. And that was the 1A. 1B was to return the total number of buildings that have sunset view, with a minor modification that if a building has the same height and if there's a view from the terrace, basically, it's still considered a room with it's got a building with a sunset view. And maybe watching the video will give you like the nuance and the clarification. Second question was more around you're given a deck of cards and each card has a bunch of names. The expectation was for you to find that name that occurs in half the cards and does not occur in half the cards, or as close to half as possible. So find a name that splits the deck into like two parts, where one pile is all the cards that contain the name, one pile is all the cards that don't contain the name, and I want you to make sure that the difference in the deck size, right, the pile 1 and pile 2 is the minimum. So as close to midpoint as possible, as close evenly as possible. So if the deck has even number of cards, then I want it to be exactly the same if possible. If not, like, 10 cards, 5-5. If you can't do 5-5, do 6-4. If you can't do 6-4, then do 3-7, 2-8, 1-9, and then like 10-0 at least. So those are the two questions. Any?
Yeah. Okay. Right? Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah.
Awesome. So
I made a mistake in the first. Yeah, I made a mistake in the first question. I took the directions from west to east. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And then Martin, so thank you so much for organizing this. I think definitely looking forward to more such sessions. We will be doing this pretty much every Saturday, 9 p.m. PST, which would be Sunday, 9:30 a.m. India time if you folks are in India, and please do the time zone conversion elsewhere. And we are looking for interviewers, people who are looking to interview and improve their interviewing skills. And we're also looking for candidates. Please ping Martin on the mock interview channel, and you can get set up for as an interviewer or as a candidate, as the case may be. And we can exchange feedback and have this collaborative session. Thank you so much.
Just
Martin, any closing words?
Yeah, just one quick question. So on Interviewing IO, I just saw that the session is available on Monday. Is that right? Hello.
I didn't understand that. What do you mean by that?
On Interviewing IO, like I connected with Martin, and I have signed up for a session with SDE Skills. So on Interviewing IO, I could see that a interview session is available on Monday. Are you going to take it on Monday?
So I think
no, it's going to be only 9 p.m. It'll always be 9 p.m. Saturday. I don't think the Monday session. I haven't edited my availability. I should probably go and remove my availability. Martin, is there? Did you set the interview up for any other day?
No. It just I think. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was created, but not sure how. But yeah, we can take a look offline if you want.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Awesome. All right. So I think, Martin, if you don't mind, we can stop the recording, and then you can wrap up the meeting. Any closing words?